on, everybody? Welcome to NFL Week 6. You know what time it is. It's time for the DFS Pick 6, the RotoGrinders DFS Pick 6. Merritt Crain. I'm joined by Lord Reeves. I'm joined by John Daigle. Reeves, what's up, buddy? How we doing?
What's going on, guys? Week 8, Week 7 was quite a mixed bag of fun there. We were talking before the show. Had a great week on DraftKings. It was fun there. But I was joking on the show is I need to cross-references because I keep track of my lineups. I think I might have set my lowest scoring cash lineup in the history of playing on FanDuel.
Congratulations. So what do you like? What do you do to celebrate?
I go to Arby's. I sit in the parking lot for 5 minutes, eat 3 beef and cheddars, and then it's kind of just like slink my way home.
That sounds like a normal Tuesday for me. Daigle, what's up, man? How you doing?
Going well. I really enjoyed swapping our DFS stories before the show because we have basically 3 people here who come on and suggest DFS, and we just talked about how miserable we were over the weekend.
It was easily my worst week of the season. I loaded up on the I had 100% double stacks of the Rams-Falcons game and the Giants-Cardinals game, and neither got there. So you know what? That's just the way it goes sometimes. We'll be back this week. We'll be stronger this week, and we're going to get into the games. But first, I want to let you guys know, FanDuel Single Entry Series, it is going on. There are 6 weeks of contests with various entry fee tiers, so you can play high stakes, low stakes, you can play them both. Why not? The 6 finalists at the end get to go to the WFFC party in Puerto Rico and play for their own prize pool. Very cool trip. If you guys get a chance to go to the live final, it's phenomenal to check out. I'm going to be hitting that up hard trying to get in. And also, let's be honest, we all want to go to Puerto Rico, so make sure you check that out. Also, in conjunction with our friends with Vegas Insider, there's a $10,000 total prizes. That's $5,000 to the winner, including various weekly and half-season prizes. That's going on SharpSide right now. Make sure you download the free SharpSide app for iOS or Android. Make the picks on the NFL lines. In total, you can play as many or as few as you want, but whoever has the most positive units wins the contest. It's all for free. Get on there, start swiping those bets, have a good time, and it's like the Tinder. I've been told. I've never been on the old Tinder because, well, I don't want to die.
And if you have, don't talk about it here because your wife's in the other room.
I haven't been on Tinder. There. But yeah. All right. Daigle, Week 8. What are you thinking about this slate, man?
Yeah, it's one that the games are interesting. They have a few spots that are highlighted that I'm really looking forward to that we'll dive into here in a minute. But overall, like the game quality is what's lacking here. But for DFS, that's why we're incentivized, right? To enjoy ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's like and obviously the Monday Night Football game isn't on the slate, but when the Steelers and Dolphins get together, if it wasn't for DFS and gambling, Reeves, I wouldn't be watching that game. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird week. It really feels like a weird week. What are you thinking about it, Reeves?
I actually am probably the minority, but I actually like when the worst games of the week are on the island games because then they just don't clutter up my Sunday and I have to pay. I just kind of can work through them and have them on and, watch them. So I actually like when the primetime games are typical dogs like Steelers, Dolphins, because that would have just cluttered up some of my space on Sunday, some of my TV space.
Yeah, you don't have to have Scott Hansen breaking in for you for Mason Rudolph rushing or something.
Yeah, so I don't mind. I mean, I've enjoyed the last 2 weeks because we haven't had, Christian McCaffrey on the main slate. So it's been real fun, and it's fun to see different listen to podcasts and listen to other people's shows, listen to our kind of just not the typical cliche of, we'll just pick Christian McCaffrey and we'll go from there. We get him back this week, but in an objectively pretty rough spot. So I mean, I'm curious to see how people handle him, and his price has gone up on both sites. So I'm really interested in that and see how people handle him. You look at the 49ers and we'll get into this matchup or we won't get into this matchup, I don't know. But, the 49ers, haven't allowed any running back to finish RB30 or higher. I'll go on a limb and say Christian McCaffrey will finish higher than RB30 this week. But McCaffrey's faced just, one defense so far that's been in the top 12 in yards from scrimmage allowed to running back so far, and he faced that defense twice. He had 18 touches for 53 yards and 18 touches for 57 yards. 49ers are third in the league. So I'm really curious to see, how much we see if defense doesn't matter or what does matter in that game and in that matchup. And if people, auto just go right back to the well and plug McCaffrey back in and do an auto spot this week.
Yeah, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say at 9.2K for a team with an 18-point team total, I don't think he's going to be that popular. So I think it's a really interesting game theory play because Derry Sanders, man, the dude gets it done. Let's go ahead and jump into this slate. We're going to talk, obviously, our 3 favorite games, 3 games that are interesting to us, and plus quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. Let's start off with Seattle and Atlanta. 53.5-point total to Seattle. They're 5.5-point favorites on the road. And Daigle, last week, if you played any Falcons, you were screwed. That was just how it worked, man. Like Julio didn't get there. Ridley sure as hell didn't get there. Devontae Freeman got kicked out of the game. Austin Hooper barely got there. Matt Ryan got to the locker room with an ankle injury. It sounds like he's going to be back this week, but I don't know. I'm not sure I believe what the team expects him to play. But Daigle, when we look at this spot, are we willing to go back and play some of these Atlanta guys?
Yeah, so there is a hanging asterisk over this game, and it has to do with Ryan's health. Because if we get Ryan, then yes, we are willing to go back, I would think, to this Falcons offense as a whole. Ryan, as we know, came into the game over 300 yards in every outing until he hit that slow point, exited to the locker room, didn't return. But if he plays this, even if there's reported limitations, like I'm going right back because some Mohamed Sanu, who, as we know, has been traded to the Patriots, leaves behind a 14% target share, leaves behind a team-high amount of routes run. And if we get Calvin Ridley on a reduced salary, now playing and projecting to head towards a career high and slot routes run. Won't be the full-time slot receiver, but the fact that he is now able to play more in the slot. Just last year even, he played only 24% from the slot, but in that limited time, caught 19 of 22 targets his way for 2 touchdowns. And now he'll be in that position a lot more. Julio Jones, who was underperformed, despite still getting targets. You run right back to him against this poor Seattle secondary if we get Ryan. Having said that, if we don't get Ryan, then we got to look elsewhere.
I see, and to me, I don't know, man. Like, I'm actually considering billing Matt Schaub if we don't get Ryan. I actually think because he's going to be a cheap quarterback, a cheap home underdog quarterback in the highest total on the slate. Traditionally, those guys have fared really well. Reeves, am I nuts for thinking that if Ryan misses, I don't hate the idea of playing a little Matt Schaub?
You're testing my mettle because I love bad quarterbacks in DFS, and we actually had them this year. You know, it feels, especially like the past few weeks, we haven't had these cheapy QBs. You know, I've already you know how I play. I love to go to those guys. We haven't had since Kyle Allen that first week he started. I haven't had one of these guys to latch onto a cash, and I was already excited to try to sell you on Ryan Tannehill. So how can I, not get the Matt Schaub? I wasn't even really expecting him. Matt Ryan hasn't missed a game since 2009. They have a bye next week, which is what I figured with what he limped off. But then I also forgot that Dan Quinn's about to be on permanent bye, so he feels like he needs to probably thrust Matt Ryan into the lineup to try to save his job. I don't see what one win would even do it if they got it. But I'm still surprised. I'm still skeptical to see how this goes later in the week. To see if he plays or not. Obviously, like everything Daigle said is true. Like we need him to play. Not only do we need Matt Ryan to play for the Falcons side, we need him to play for the Seahawks side. Because we've seen it with Russell Wilson. It didn't matter how great it was. We had this in week 4 on this show. We talked. I think it was the first show I came back and did, and we talked about the scenario with Russell Wilson. It doesn't matter if the defense they're playing is going to give up a high, a bunch of efficiency through the air, and the Falcons are dead last in the NFL in expected points added via their pass defense. If the Seattle Seahawks come out and get a lead, and they did this in week 4 against the Cardinals, dude, Russell's going to throw 24 passes. He's going to throw 23 passes. And can he throw 3 to 4 touchdowns on those 23 to 24 passes? Absolutely. But you're going to pay the top QB, the number 1 QB in terms of pricing on both main slates. You're going to pay for that. I mean, it's tough. That volume is always lingering. So if Matt Schaub plays, and we get Seattle as favorites, and they jump out to a lead, and then they just ride Chris Carson out the rest of the way and let Russ, have to do his due diligence on 20 to 25 pass attempts. We're back into that spot where you're probably overpaying, for a great matchup and a great quarterback and a great matchup. So, I mean, we need Schaub to play to carry, Russ's water as well.
We need Ryan to play, not Schaub. Because
we need Ryan to play.
Not Schaub.
Yeah, but, I don't know. To me, like, if Seattle gets out to the big lead like we talked about, Schaub's still going to be throwing, and he's still got Ridley and Julio to throw the ball to. I'm not sure about old Hooper there, but I think it's interesting. What about a guy like Devontae Freeman? Last week, obviously, got ejected. Daigle, what do you think about Freeman?
I mean, yes, Freeman. Reeves talked about Freeman last week, how it was just unsustainable for him to continue spiking. I think he had 3 receiving touchdowns in the past two games coming into that performance. And then only 3 targets, 6 yards, obviously not a touchdown on those 6 yards, only 7 carries. Yes, Ito Smith, may not be around. We're not sure. Pretty sure he's not going to play. And it would be Brian Hill behind him. But even so, even with Ryan, Freeman's not the guy you want to roll out against Seattle, because if Ryan plays, the offensive situation doesn't change. They continue rearing him back and allowing him to throw 35 times or whatever. And then, of course, if Schaub plays, then you don't really want to play Freeman anyhow because the game script wouldn't present itself.
Okay, let's talk about the Seattle side, because, Reeves, you were talking about if Seattle gets that to a big lead, we expect them just to kind of pound Chris Carson and don't get cute Russell Wilson's throwing 25 passes or so. Who do you think is viable on the Seattle side, Reeves?
Yeah, it's real tricky because, obviously, we talk about the inherent volume that's always there. Obviously, people are going to be drawn to the matchup with Russ. And then, Carson, he's had 24 more touches now in 4 consecutive games. He was awful last week and still got 24 touches in that game. He's typically a guy that aesthetically is fun to watch at play too as well. And he was just bad last week in that matchup against the Ravens. Obviously, I think you go back to him. The Falcons actually have been pretty decent against the run, but I don't think it would matter just based on what we know what Brian Schottenheimer wants to do. And if the game script's there, and if we're talking about the Falcons pass defense, that means you're just getting scoring opportunities for a guy like Chris Carson as well. I'm real curious to see how people handle Tyler Lockett, because I've talked about on the show a few times that Tyler Lockett's just a guy I don't play in DFS, even when he's in these objectively strong smash spots, especially when he's priced at $7K on both sites, 7.2 at FanDuel, 7 on DK. He's got just one 20-point game this season, and it came in just a jailbreak scenario in that game that they were just getting roasted by the Saints and had to come back. He had just one 20-point game last year, and he just had one 20-point game in 2017. He's just a guy that typically doesn't get a lot of volume, and that's why I typically avoid him at his price. If we're going to play a guy, I think it's a guy we've talked about a few times, just hasn't popped for us yet, is DK Metcalf.
Yeah, baby. Straight lines for days.
Yeah, he's yet to clear 4 catches in a game this season, but the Falcons are 32nd in points allowed to opposing left wide receivers. They're 24th in wide receivers that line up on the right side of the field. DK Metcalf runs 86% of his routes on the perimeter. It sets up well for him. We talk about him just still not able to cash in these end zone targets. He still leads the team in end zone targets. So, he's the guy we keep chasing our tail a little bit with DK Metcalf. But objectively, when you're talking about pricing, I'm priced out on Tyler Lockett because he hasn't shown the requisite upside for me to pay that type of cost and the type of volume, whereas I can still say DK could get there in 3x, 3 to 3.5 times X the salary, whereas I think Lockett is a pretty big stretch for it, even in a great spot.
Yeah, so Daigle, are you willing to play these passing guys? Because I think Reeves really nailed the guy that I'm interested in, a DK Metcalf.
Yeah, if I go a passing option, I do actually favor, as Reeves said, against the outside corners, I favor Metcalf over Lockett. But I do still prefer Carson in this spot. And it's for the touches, but more or less Rashad Penny, despite the fact they drafted him number 27 overall last year in the first round, he's become an afterthought. He's become purely a handcuff who doesn't touch the ball. Two snaps, no touches last week behind CJ Prosise, who played 6 snaps. Carson has now set a career high in snap rate in 2 of his last 4 games. He just continues topping his own workload. He's going to hit over 90% in the next couple of weeks if he's healthy. So that's the guy that's the cash and tournament play, if only for his usage alone.
Yeah, and I don't know, that pick was weird at the time when they took Rashad Penny when they did. Now it's even weirder in hindsight. All right, let's move on to Oakland at Houston. 51.5 point total. Houston 6.5 point favorites. And Reeves, when I look at this game, I see the game that I think is most likely to shoot out. And the Houston side, look, I think is obvious. Oakland, they just got torched by Aaron Rodgers. Of course, we're going to like Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, Kenny Stills, Kiki QT. Of course, we're going to like those guys. But I even like the Oakland side a little bit. Let's start with Houston, though, Reeves. What are we liking over here?
Yeah, I mean, I like a little bit more if we get, if Tyrell Williams plays, maybe they activate Zay Jones, because the way to beat Houston is to target wide receivers. Wide receiver play is what roasts Houston, and Oakland is 29th in targets per game to their wide receivers and 32nd in yardage per game for their wide receivers. So we would like to see Tyrell come back and kind of up this matchup a little bit, because that's the mismatch side for when you play Houston. You always want to target Houston with wide receiver play. But on the other side, I mean, it's just a dream spot for Deshaun Watson. I mean, Oakland is just hemorrhaging points on the back end. They're actually solid against the run, but they have a lot of league high 9 touchdowns outside the red zone this season. They're allowing a pass play of once every 10 plays on defense. It's the highest rate in the league. So it sets up really well for a guy like Deshaun Watson and for their receivers now with no Will Fuller, who had 46% of their deep targets on the season so far. And we saw DeAndre Hopkins bounce back with Will Fuller out last week. He's had 12 targets in back-to-back games. You have to pay up for him, but I think he's the one guy kind of worth paying up for on both sides at the wide receiver position. And then Kenny Stills is in just a fantastic spot. I mean, he's 4th in the NFL in yards per route run. Now he's a full-time player. He played 94% of snaps last week against the Raiders defense, who's at worst against the vertical pass, and just got rid of another cornerback, Gary and Conley, who kind of flipped locker rooms in this game. So it just really sets up, because what the Raiders are worst at, the vertical pass, and what they're best at, kind of defending the run, kind of plays into what we want to target with the Houston Texans offense, because we never want to be kind of talked into Carlos Hyde, and we don't really need to be. We can kind of just be talked into Deshaun Watson and the pass catchers. We saw the Green Bay Packers, gaggle of vagabonds, wide receivers just kind of just do whatever they wanted to do last week against the Raiders. So now you get Kenny Stills, DeAndre Hopkins, Kiki QT. It's just an objectively, smash spot at home against the Raiders team that also has never made it back home yet from a month ago.
That's amazing. That's special. I don't know what the NFL is doing. The poor Raiders, maybe they're just mad that they're moving to Vegas, but it's very strange. So, Daigle, when I look at this Houston spot, obviously DeAndre Hopkins is the top play. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. He's going to be incredibly chalky. Stills is the guy that I love, man. I love his skill set against a team like Oakland.
You say incredibly chalky. See, I came into this show thinking that his and Stills' ownership would actually be pretty similar. I think Stills is going to catch on heavily as the week continues here, because unlike when they lost, or when all 4 were healthy, QT, Stills included behind Fuller and Hopkins, Stills still was used improperly in the slot. Whereas now he's playing that position that he was so strong at, even with bad quarterback play in Miami. He's going to play every snap. He came in that last game, Fuller played 3 snaps, 94% of their snaps, ran around on 95% of Deshaun Watson's dropbacks. And as we talked about, now gets a Oakland team who shoddy corners, can't defend the pass at all. My concern in this game, and it jumped out when I first saw it as well, is that I don't know. Yes, I know Houston's weaknesses, as Reeves talked about. I don't know how Oakland attacks that, because this offense flows through Darren Waller and secondary Josh Jacobs. It does not go to their receivers whatsoever, and their best receiver has plantar fasciitis, questionable for this game as a whole. So we need Oakland to attack somehow. And outside of Darren Waller, I'm not sure how they do it, because they're not going to do what they should do and just go full Eagles on everyone and just get Foster Moreau and Darren Waller involved on 12 personnel for 70% of their snaps.
I'm so glad we got a Foster Moreau reference in this show. That's good.
Not bad. Yeah, not bad.
So if Tyrell Williams plays, Reeves, and obviously it's questionable, but if Tyrell Williams plays, do we attack him? Because at 5.5K, I think people are going to get sticker shock from that price tag.
I mean, I doubt anyone wants to play him anyways, especially we could just go across with Kenny Stills being so cheap.
I want to play
kind
him.
Of equal pricing. I think he's interesting if he does play. I mean, it's tough. I mean, that's a tough injury, that plantar fasciitis. We kind of talked about it, it being the Tim Duncan injury. A few weeks ago. He's also a guy that was kind of really living on that touchdown deodorant. He hasn't gone over 46 yards in any of his games except for that season opener, and was kind of living off that touchdown ability. It's just like Daigle said, man, they just have not shown any ability to get the ball on the perimeter. And that's where we want to just exploit Houston. That's what this game needs to pop. because I was early in the week when I was looking at the QB streaming, pieces, and I was like, oh, well, this could be a spot for Derek Carr. And then I looked at just under the hood, and I was like, ooh, just don't know how he gets there. I just don't know how he gets there because the way to beat Houston is with wide receiver play, and they are bad.
And the strength of their offense, like they like to lean on Josh Jacobs and a offensive line that's actually good. They continue performing above expectations. But today's practice, like first of all, Josh Jacobs left that Packers game early and came back, and then Gruden came out today and didn't even try to cover it up, didn't mask anything. He's like, no, he's hurt. Left the game, got a shot, came back out, fought through it, and the shoulder injury is legitimate, quote unquote. So now we're concerned about him behind an offensive line that also is dealing with 3 different injuries, 2 offensive linemen who are still banged up from the Packers, and Gabe Jackson and Rodney Hudson, and Trent Brown got limited practice in today at right tackle. So it's just one that screams like one that we should want to be on, and that's why it's a confusing situation because everything doesn't fit like a puzzle. It's just like clashing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me that – go ahead, Reeves.
I would say, Oakland is second in the league in first down run rate. They lead the league with 5.6 yards per play on first down run plays. Houston is third in the league defending first down runs, just 3.1 yards per play. So it's another one of these things that it just doesn't fit. The Jenga pieces are toppling over.
Yeah, I want some of. I might play Derek Carr this week. I really might. That'll be. I'll do two.
You've already 2 segments in, and you've already tried to play Matt Schaub and Derek Carr.
Yeah, I'll leave the Deshaun Watsons for you guys.
When you cash in one of 150, you just start looking for ways.
Hey, I'm just saying there is exactly one person on the planet who has won the Millie Maker with Derek Carr, and he's sitting right here. So y'all can hate on Derek Carr all you want, but he's a hero. I hope
popping collars, popping collars.
Oh, it's already up there. Oh, my bad. No. No, I really don't hate Tyrell Williams here. I hope we get word that he's going to be healthy enough to play a full game, because if that happens, I really think he could crush in this spot at 5% ownership. All right, let's move on to the Giants and the Lions. And, of course, the big piece of news here, Daigle, it's that Kerryon Johnson on IR. He's going to miss probably the rest of the season. Ty Johnson expected to get the starting gig for Detroit. A phenomenal matchup against the Giants. And Ty Johnson at 4.9K. We can fully expect Ty Johnson to be chalk this week, right?
Absolutely. We're going to just work with the information we have because we were concerned about a potential trade before this game and the fact that they did call up Paul Perkins. Paul Perkins and Trey Carson weren't active last week, which then saw Ty Johnson's snaps, targets, routes run, carries, got 100% of the work inside the 10-yard line, got their goal line carries. It all increased. Whereas J.D. McKissick's role did not increase whatsoever, like slightly in routes run, but that's about it. The thing is, yes, Perkins and Trey Carson are just guys, but the Lions are big on just guys. They're team jag because C.J. Anderson even worked over Kerryon Johnson, got the fruitful touches that we needed the first 2 weeks before they finally just said, what are we doing? And then cut him. This is a stubborn coaching staff, and that is my concern for Ty Johnson. Having said that, his price and opportunity lends itself to be one of the higher-owned running backs of Week 8.
Yeah, and see, when I look at it, I kind of think, and Reeves, I want to hear what you have to say about this too, because I've seen this situation with this Lions coaching staff before, and we've seen it before where they're just like, screw it, I know we're supposed to run with Ty Johnson. We're just going to let Stafford throw the ball 40 times. Reeves, I sort of get the feeling that is what's going to happen in this game.
And, I mean, they're a team that just objectively can't run it well, which stinks as well. They've really struggled to run the ball well. It's kind of like the Malcolm Brown situation from a couple weeks ago. We've got a guy that's going to get elevated into, but like Kerryon Johnson had sucked. Like he's been bad. So I mean, Kerryon Johnson was a guy a lot of people went to last week, and I didn't understand why his ownership was so high. But I mean, at 4.9K, I mean, we've had more of these spots hit than not. Wayne, we tried to talk ourselves out of Wayne Gallman. He smoked. Some people try to talk themselves out of Tavis Murray. He smoked. I mean, it's just kind of live with it here. I think at 4.9, you roll with him. He's got some pass catching ability. He was just a guy though at Maryland does the same hey, he was always in a timeshare at Maryland. The most touches he had in a season at Maryland was 142. His senior year, he dealt with a calf injury, but shared his most work with Anthony McFarland, who a lot of people are high on, coming into the pros. He popped on his pro day, though. Ty Johnson did. He ran at 4.45, 40, kind of popped, got on the radar. He was team preseason. But he's been like just a kind of a share of the backfield, timeshare back his whole career, dating back to college. But he's so cheap, and the matchup's so good. I mean, the Giants just made Chase Edmonds look like Barry Sanders last week. They're 28th in opposing backfields are 28th. They have the 28th most, or I'm sorry, the 5th most. So they're 28th in the league, and 168.3 yards per scrimmage allowed to opposing backfields. Chase Edmonds had 35 fantasy points with only 2 catches. He had as many 20-yard touchdown runs in that game that David Johnson has his whole career. So I mean, it's just they're at home. They're huge favorites. It's hard to talk yourself out of it. But like the previous game we just talked about between Houston and Oakland, this is just a sink spot for where the Giants suck and what the Lions are good at. I mean, the Lions on downfield, or the Giants on downfield targets, are allowing the 3rd highest rate of completions, 54%, only ahead of the Dolphins and the Falcons. Matthew Stafford leads the league in the highest rate on downfield targets this year. His ADOT has spiked. 21% of his completions have gone for 20 or more yards. That's the highest rate in the NFL. So we're getting back, obviously we don't have to chase Marvin Jones because he used up all of his allotted points last week. We would hope. But he's also very good on those targets. 11 of his 16. He's caught 11 of 16 of those downfield targets, 69%. Kenny Galladay's only caught 6 of 16 of his downfield targets this year, which is kind of a bummer.
He's got to start getting there sometime, right?
His catchable target rate at Pro Football Focus is the lowest of all 83 wide receivers with 20 or more targets on the season. But the overall volume is still there. Per week, 7 or more targets, in all these games but one. Or he's at 8 or more targets in every game prior to last week. So, I mean, and we talk about the Giants secondary every week as well. I mean, DeAndre Baker, Janoris Jenkins, and Grant Haley have they're all in the top 20 in yards per allowed per coverage snap in the NFL. So, I mean, it's just a spot I think that Galladay was another guy. I wasn't on either of the Lions that were properly owned, but if you would have told me that the Lions were going to score 30 points, I figured Galladay would have got a piece of it, and it would have all gone.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a disaster last week. On the Giants side, obviously, we're going to love Saquon. That's every single week, but I especially love this matchup against the linebacking core that struggles to defend guys. Saquon came in, didn't exactly crush it last week, but still did good enough, especially in a week where a lot of people disappointed. Daigle, what do you like on the Giants?
The Giants are just tough because it is truly a sink spot. Just playing the Cardinals, and it was a Cardinals defense that couldn't pressure the quarterback whatsoever, was consistently getting pummeled by the tight end, wide receivers, couldn't stop the run, and yet they did nothing but reach Daniel Jones with ease, as if the offensive line was completely invisible, because he's still been under pressure the most of any quarterback since he was thrown under center. That makes me somewhat lean, actually, towards the Lions defense than it does the Giants pieces, because I don't think anyone here outside of Golden Tate you should be interested in, outside of Golden Tate and Barkley, of course. But those are the only 2 guys really you can be interested in, because Slayton, not dependable on the outside. Sterling Shepard, if we get him back, that gets interesting because he would be on the outside and Tate would continue running as he did in their first game they played together from the slot heavily. So we need to see if we get Shepard. But, yeah, it's Tate and Barkley, and it's ugly, man.
Yeah, I think obviously
my Cardinals D pick last week, too. Remember that.
That was good.
All right, give us a D pick. There you go, Reeves. Here you go.
No, I said you nixed it last week. I know.
I'm not going to nix this one.
It's too late. It already happened.
Okay. Oh, fine. I think, obviously we're recording this Wednesday night, so we don't have the Sterling Shepard news today. I'm sort of expecting him to play, so we're going to have to see what ends up happening there. But Reeves, is there anybody on the Giants you're prioritizing?
I mean, Saquon's still good. I mean, he came back. He played 86% of snaps. He had all 23 backfield opportunities. The Lions have just been – that's why we were on Dalvin Cook. Obviously, everyone was on Dalvin Cook most weeks anyways. The Lions have just been getting crushed by opposing backs. 30th in rushing points allowed, 20th in receiving points allowed backfields. So, I mean, Saquon, I think he's probably at the top tier in pricing. He's probably – I would have him ahead of McCaffrey, for a guy to play. And if you get this game to go back and forth a little bit, there's some upside there as well. In the Daigle tonight, Daniel Jones has just been a turnover machine. Won all of his starts. And then he's had two objectively really strong outlooks coming in, and he squandered both. One, it was against Washington, and that one we kind of forgave because we were like, oh, well, Haskins played and the Giants controlled game script, and it kind of ruined it. But then last week against Arizona, I mean, we can say, oh, he played in the rain or whatever, but I mean, he's had two really great spots, and he squandered both for fantasy. 12.3 points and 10.4 points. He's just not a guy we can't trust.
Fantasy Twitter's not going to be happy with you. Fantasy Twitter says you're not allowed to talk crap about Danny Dimes.
I know, and my son is not going to be happy with me either. But
that's just part of parenthood, man.
Yeah, but he's been tough to trust. And look what he's done to Evan Ingram. And Evan Ingram had one really terrible drop in that game last week. But Evan Ingram has passed 4 games since that game of just crushing that opener with the Bucs, or Daniel Jones's opener. He's caught just 11 of 23 targets, 48% of his targets for 102 total yards, 4.4 yards per target in those games that he's played with Daniel Jones. He's been really hurt by the inefficiency of Daniel Jones. It's a good matchup though on paper. If you want to go back to you have to pay for Evan Ingram, which is another part of the problem. But I mean, Lions are bad against tight ends. They've kind of always been. Their linebackers are poor again in coverage. They're 30th in yards per target. A lot of the tight ends, 29th in yards per game. So I mean, if you want to go back and chase that, I mean, the big problem though just turns to pointing and looking at the quarterback play, and it just hasn't been good enough to get people to the requisite, type of floors and ceilings we want to play.
Well, go ahead.
I was just saying, a game stack, though, that's why it's interesting, because it makes itself a tournament game theory opportunity in avoiding the bad pieces of this game and getting the contrarian pieces. And Stafford, Galladay, who, as we said, 8 targets until last week, a random 2 targets, going to still the number 1 receiver over Jones, and now has touchdown and air yards positive regression looking at him. And then you can run it back with Barkley and just avoid that situation altogether. And so you just get the stronger pieces in a game stack.
Yeah, if I'm building game stack here, like you said, Daigle, it's Stafford, it's Galladay, and it's Saquon. And I'm going to be happy with that, and I feel really confident that combination is going to bring. And
it also gets you off Ty Johnson in tournaments. It's actually the perfect stat.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way you're thinking over there. I like it. All right, let's talk some of our other favorite quarterbacks. Reeves, who do you have here? What are you looking at as far as other quarterbacks go? Are you on the Kirk Cousins revenge train? Is that what's going on, or who you like?
Well, if you want to play Thursday through Monday, you can dabble with some Kirk.
I want to play Irv Smith, so let's play Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday through Monday. I like playing Thursday through Monday slate anyways. It's one of my favorite slates to play just because of the ownership, people chasing some points, especially when bad teams are involved on Thursday night. So you might see some ownership extended on some guys that shouldn't be extended on, like Kyle Rudolph and stuff like that. But I mean, I was prepared to try to bring up a bad quarterback to play, and you already beat me to the gun on 2 guys. But I mean, I was going to talk about Ryan Tannehill just because he's so cheap. Last week was his first 300-yard passing game since 2016, which may feel like point chasing a little bit, but you look at this Bucs team, their complete pass funnel defense, 18.3% of their yardage gained this season has come via rushing, the lowest rate in the league, which means that they give up the highest percentage of passing yardage. Then you look at just who they've played and who they've allowed points to. Look at the past 4 quarterbacks they played. Kyle Allen, Teddy Bridgewater, Jared Goff, and Daniel Jones. All those guys have 17 or more fantasy points against them. Those guys have completed 68% of their passes. They all have multiple touchdown passes in those games. It's really hard for me to I've been itching to play a bad quarterback in DFS so badly, and we got our guy this week. I mean, I know how the Ryan Tannehill story ultimately ends, and Titans fans will ultimately find that out as well. But this week at home against that Tampa Bay defense that just is inviting teams to throw all over them, and it's the worst part of their defense. I mean, it's going to be tough to ignore him at that 5,100, pricing.
Oh boy, that's clicking Ryan Tannehill's name. I know I was talking about Matt Schaub earlier, but Tannehill, never mind. He's better than Matt Schaub. What am I talking about? Daigle, who are you looking at quarterback?
Well, if you don't want to click Matt Schaub and you don't want to click Ryan Tannehill, can I get you to click Mitchell Trubisky? Because this is, by the way, Week 8's the bad quarterback show, apparently. I was not prepared for that. But this Chargers defense continues getting entirely too much credit. The median pressuring the quarterback, median pressure rate, 28 in Football Outsiders' past defense DVOA. And you just look, because the past 4 weeks, have they been good? Yes. But the past 4 weeks, Josh Rosen, Joe Flacco, Devlin Hodges, and then last week, obviously, they got Tannehill, who had a career high performance. So now we get Mitchell Trubisky in this spot where the stacking options are quite simple because the team can't run the ball. Allen Robinson survived with Chase Daniel, and he continued to survive and be one of the league's top receivers with Trubisky. And Anthony Miller also had all his usage rates across the board upped. Ran around on 80% of Trubisky's dropbacks last week. Yes, he hit in garbage time, and Trubisky's stats from last week hit in garbage time. But you still get a rushing floor and we've seen a ceiling in the past, right? Against a very bad defense off of a very bad week against a very good Saints defense.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually pair Trubisky and Anthony Miller for $800 cheaper than Christian McCaffrey costs.
That's incredible.
It's amazing. I don't hate that. I really don't. This is a team too that Reeves, would you agree with me here? They seem to be throwing more than they probably should be.
Yeah, I mean, they're number one, I believe, now in neutral pass rate. And of course, a lot of that came last week when they just completely abandoned, the throw. And that game was close for a period going into that third quarter, and the Saints just really pulled away. Another guy I think that's very interesting that people shouldn't forget about, and we're probably going to have to wait to this game time decision use hits. Drew Brees is priced way down on both sites. On FanDuel, FanDuel's done this weird thing all year where the guys that are hurt, they price down. And there was remember the 1 week they put Saquon as min, and Saquon almost was going to come back.
Yeah, he was going to play. Yeah.
Out. Drew Brees is 7,200. He's the QB 21 on FanDuel. He's the QB 9 on DK, but that's still totally palatable as well in this matchup against Arizona indoors. If he comes back and plays, because it's not like Brees is coming back and he had a hamstring pull or a shoulder injury. The dude broke his thumb. He had if he's good to go and he's good to throw the football, I mean, he's going to come back into an objective smash spot. And he's going to be way underpriced for that spot. I mean, if this is a typical Drew Brees playing the Arizona Cardinals defense in the midst of the season, he would be probably the top quarterback priced on the board, or at least top three to four. So, I mean, if you can get him and he's playing at 7,200 on FanDuel and 6,300 on DK, I think it's just a great thing to take advantage of, because he's probably not even, his name probably isn't even on people's minds. And you might have to wait till Sunday to plug him into lineups, and a lot of people just aren't going to do that.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea. I mean, I've played worse guys than Drew Brees coming off of an injury. So, might as well. All right, let's talk some running backs. Daigle, who you got for us?
We'll keep this one pretty simple because Leonard Fournette is somehow second in the league in rushing, continues just getting all the touches you want. At least 23, I believe, in the last 4 games, shores up near 100% of his team's carries and backfield targets the past month. And now, and yet, I should say, he has only scored 1 touchdown in the year. It's not going to be positive TD regression. It's going to be positive TD dam breaking. And it's just a matter of catching that game. And in this game against the Jets, is their defensive strong suit, their defensive line? Yes. But it's still one that is not only injured, but bad game script for the opposing Jets offense. So I do just run it right back with Leonard Fournette.
Leonard Fournette, man. That guy.
He was almost there, buddy. He almost got that 100-yard.
I was underweight on him, so I didn't care. I was thrilled that he didn't do well. Didn't matter for me, but I was perfectly fine that Leonard Fournette didn't do well. Reeves, who are you looking at running back?
Yeah, Fournette had a 4th and 1 carry the first drive of the game and got stoned, and they just never really got back there again. They're just a team that they struggle when they get inside the red zone. And Minshew is actually the last 2 weeks has kind of really reopened the door for Foles here, the way he's played. I know that they won last week, but he's got back-to-back games. He was under 50% completion rate. He ran around a little bit last week is what helped him, but that game shouldn't have required Andy Dalton throwing 3 interceptions and 5 pass attempts in the fourth quarter, because they should have been up by in the 20s. They kept selling for field goals and kept selling out on drives. But I mean, running back. I mean, I think you got to go back to the guys that were running back 1 and running back 2 last week. I mean, both those guys have to be in play again. Latavius Murray, I doubt we get Alvin Kamara. He didn't practice today, and this is Wednesday, so things can change. But the Saints are on bye next week. So why not let Kamara have another week, go through the bye? That gives them almost a full 4 weeks from Sunday he played to Sunday he plays again, where you get him back and the ankle's healthy. Latavius Murray played 83% of the snaps. He handled 32 of 37 backfield touches. Arizona's allowed 128 yards for scrimmage to lead backs over the past 5 games. Just seems like another spot. Like they're at home in the Dome. If Breeze plays, it's even better. A better spot for him. And then the other guy that was the RB1 we talked a little bit was Chase Edmonds. All signs point to David Johnson not playing in this game at this point. They added 2 running backs, kind of show up their depth. Now the problem is that the Saints, the matchup, so the Cardinals have gotten really fat or gotten on track, I should say, and it didn't happen last week in the past game. But they've played the Bengals, the Falcons, and the Giants the past 3 games. The Saints are not those teams. And the Saints haven't allowed more than 300 total yards to an opposing team. I believe it's now in 4 straight games, which is their longest streak in 12 years or something. But the thing is that they give up a lot of receptions to running backs, and it has to do with some little bit of game script. And if we don't have David Johnson playing, and David Johnson, by the way, and we saw it kind of hurt Kyler Murray. A lot of people say the rain and stuff. David Johnson's been their best vertical receiver. So when we removed David Johnson from the fold last week, Kyler, the horizontal rate is back.
The horizontal rate, baby.
It was back, baby. It was back. But the Saints are 26th in receptions allowed to the position. So on DK, Chase Edmonds still has a little bit of a floor, and we know he has some upside. He's shown a little more juice than DJ anyways. The matchup's not as good, but I mean, those guys both have to be back still in the conversation. And then our guy, Dusty Knees, Todd Gurley, we have to at least talk about him a little bit, because this Bengals situation, man, is unbelievable. Their rushing differential now is the largest through 7 games in any season in NFL history for a team. They're negative. They're minus 951 rushing yards in their opponents through 7 games, the highest in the NFL. It's crazy. And then the thing about Gurley is he played a season low 61% of snaps last week, but he still had a touch on 42% of his snaps. And the touches were there. And the thing that is just going to drive me crazy too about this week with Gurley, and while he'll still pop in projections other than just the matchup, is that he has touchdown equity in the offense still. And he should have had 2. They just didn't challenge the one last week because they didn't care. But he was definitely in the end zone on that second one. But he keeps getting into the paint weekly when he plays, even though he doesn't get any yardage and he looks objectively bad. He keeps getting into the end zone. So I think this is the first week I have Todd Gurley ranked as an RB1. So I can't wait for it to all just go poorly.
Yeah, I worry about Todd Gurley's negative touchdown regression at some point, but you are right. Like just last week alone, only, as we said, a season low in snaps, but still 10 touches inside the 20. It's like they get in the 20 and then have blockers for any other running back but Gurley. They stick him in, and he can benefit off that.
All right. Well, from Todd Gurley, let's talk about wide receivers. Daigle, who you got a wide out that you're looking at?
I'm going to play Mike Williams till that MFR hits. Oh. I swear to you. And I'm going to run back.
4K, baby. 4K.
Dude, I never play that guy.
4K, just under 10 targets per game the past 3 weeks since he's come back from injury. Continues getting air yards, and then also led them in targets inside the 10 end zone targets last week. It's going to hit. It's going to happen. And I'm going to go crazy waiting for it to happen. And
he's the same price as Deebo Samuel.
And if I'm playing Mitch Trubisky, and if I play Anthony Miller, I'm sure as hell going to play Mike Williams.
Dante Moncrief is 4K this week.
That's insulting. Eric, it's insulting.
That's how good I feel, because I always do this. Right? I always chase these guys. No, this is going to be the week. I swear, this is the time. And I never played Mike Williams. I really think Hunter Henry being back hurts him.
But it's only hurt the results, though. That's the thing. Everything else is there.
That's what I care about. There's also a process.
It's funny though, because like the Chargers offense is actually, it's like one poised to blow up despite the fact that they can't pass protect, because even Keenan Allen still leads the league in air yards. Like he's getting downfield. His targets have dropped immensely the past month, but like he's still getting important downfield targets. And then obviously Melvin Gordon still getting every single goal line carry. And if Gordon reaches a half an inch further as opposed to reaching a quarter inch and dropping the ball, we don't even talk about it. We're like, oh, okay. He rushed for 2 touchdowns. Great.
All right, Reeves, who do you got for us at wide receiver? Don't say Mike Williams.
No, listen, I wasn't going to bring him up, but like I was secretly going to keep jamming him in the lineups if I can. I mean, since Daigle brought it up, I piggyback. I wasn't going to do it, but 4K is hilarious though. But there's a lot of guys I think that are in play this week. John Brown again. Keep going back to the John Brown until they decide they want to price him up. He's had 50 yards receiving in every game. Just one of 2 guys do that in the season. You don't need me to talk about the Eagles and even getting Jalen Mills and Ronald Darby back. Those guys aren't fast enough to keep.
Those guys suck.
They're good. Imagine getting those guys back and it's an upgrade.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's everybody. I heard people say last week, "Oh no, they're getting Jalen Mills back. They'll be fine." What?
That's when people try to overanalyze positions entirely too much. Yeah.
I mean, what are we doing? If you don't want to play Tannehill, which I totally fine. I understand that. No one's a masochist like me, loves to play these bad quarterbacks. But what are we going to do with these receivers, man? Because I mean, they're dirt cheap. I mean, Corey Davis and A.J. Brown. Corey Davis had a season high, 24% of targets last week in his first game with Tannehill. He had 7 targets. Tannehill was throwing into tight windows. I mean, that was a matchup we weren't even on. Like, we weren't on them against the Chargers.
I'm not going to lie. It's Wednesday. I haven't dug into it too much, but I'm not kidding. Like, Tannehill to Corey Davis seems like a really interesting stack to me, and I'll just AJ
Brown is dominating like red zone looks, and if they might not have Delaney Walker in this game, like that ups his red zone usage. I mean, the Buccaneers are allowing the 31st most receptions per game to wide receivers. It kind of
makes a lot of sense.
I get it. And then just a couple injury situations to touch on. I know that these guys haven't hit, and we're probably on I think we're on week 9 of the Is Christian Kirk watch going to play. But last week, the Saints they took some L's in the second row. PJ Williams is suspended. His backup, Patrick Robinson, had a hamstring injury. Eli Apple had a knee injury. All those guys are expected to be out this week. I know that we've chased kind of these Cardinals receivers in the past, but it just leaves Marshawn Lattimore, a guy that doesn't travel into the slot, and the Cardinals only throw the slot. Kind of a matchup wise there could lead to something. And then the Bengals situation last week, obviously they lost William Jackson and Drake Kirkpatrick. Well, their 2 backups last week were awful. Tony McRae and B.W. Webb, they were just a disaster. McRae allowed a perfect passer rating in his coverage last week, 158.3. Webb allowed 3 of 5 targets to be completed for 83 yards in his coverage. They were bad. And I know, again, everyone's been chasing Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks, but those are the guys that they're going to be guarding on the perimeter, and they were just awful last week. So, I mean, it's another situation just to follow from an injury stance. These backups that just they were just awful against the Jaguars.
And if you're going to play Ryan Tannehill and Corey Davis, I'll be damned if I'm not playing Mike Evans running it back with him, because he leaves to his bye with 17 targets, just not talked about since it was Chris Godwin who went over 100 with a touchdown. But Evans still, like I said, 17 targets last game, still has 150 more air yards than Chris Godwin, but 55 fewer fantasy points. Like, it's going to hit. And as we know, when Evans goes off, Evans goes off.
That's the big boy number.
He's the clutter scorer of the bunch. And if this is going to be a game stack, then yes, that's who I'm going back with.
Yeah, and the fact that he's cheaper than Godwin, just 6.6K for Mike Evans, whether you like him or not, whether you like the spot or not, it's just too damn cheap. So, all right. Reeves, last thoughts on the slate for you, man.
No, man, I think we covered it pretty well. Obviously, every week we get some injury news. Last week, definitely we had a lot of things happen. And I wish that we would have had Chase Edmonds news before because, everyone would have played him. But actually, in a way, it was kind of good that we did it.
I still lost and played Chase Edmonds. I had 22% Chase Edmonds. Lost money. I mean, just some of the weeks those happen, man. Daigle, last thoughts on the slate for you?
I still need to clean out the vomit in my trash can for when Chase Edmonds scored the first touchdown, let alone his third one.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, I think we covered it pretty well. Like, we discussed the games in depth, whether you're going to stack them or not, or maybe the situation to avoid. I think we're ready for week 9. We're not ready for any weeks anymore.
I'm ready for week 9. I don't care, man. Let's keep it rolling, baby. All right, we got to get off here. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Coming up next, we've got the Pro Football Focus Show. It's with Jordan Cooper and Daniel Kelly. Up next, thanks for Daigle. Thanks to Reeves. Thanks to the D-Train for producing. I'm Eric. We'll catch y'all later. Peace.